South by Southwest Interactive Conference brings together cutting-edge technologies and top-notch reporters and bloggers in the industry to discuss the future of emerging technology.
EMV is basically a payment scheme organized by the major payment schemes in the world, Europay, MasterCard, and Visa. And with the inclusion of the smart card in that scheme, they're able to project a piece of security into the cardholder's hands that they previously didn't have before. And that's a secure representation of that issuer. What that means is the issuer is able to place more direct trust in the transactions as they're occurring by doing real-time transaction confirmation. What we see with magstripe systems today is it's all based on the back-end system. We've had the famous, say, the merchants getting hacked, the numbers getting out, and we as consumers end up paying for that by having our numbers, reissued, getting cards reissued, which is a huge inconvenience to us. But the major issuers, banks, and schemes in the United States haven't moved to EMV, and we're now the target for the fraud of the world. Canada, Mexico, so both our borders we're surrounded by countries using EMV, and the fraud has migrated to the United States. We're increasingly being rejected for payments when we go to Europe because we have magstripe-based systems. I encountered a strange side effect of that on a business trip I had to San Francisco last week. So even domestically traveling for business, the fraud alerts are getting set off at a much lower bar now because the systems don't have enough security in place to assure the transactions. The banks are calling up individual cardholders, or in some cases forgetting to call individual cardholders in my case. So there's an increasing number of false fraud alerts hitting us as consumers because we don't have the chip and pin technology, the smart card in our hands to authenticate that transaction when we make the transaction. When the technology does arrive to the United States, we've seen indications from banks and issuers that the first thing they're going to do is target people like myself and business people who travel a lot. They're going to do what they typically do and make it a high-end product. They're going to market it as a high-end, just like Blue was, American Express Blue with the chip. But what they're going to do is they're going to continue to use magstripe in the States, but allow us to use the chip when we're overseas. So again, that only solves half the problem until we actually update the software in the terminals and the payment schemes here in the States to use the chip everywhere. We use our mobile phones for virtually everything, and we're putting more and more technology into our phones, particularly wireless technology. And another technology that applies in the payment space is something called NFC, which is just an acronym for Near Field Communication. And that technology will allow us to communicate with the terminals that we already have for those little convenience payments in convenience stores and fast food places, where we just pay now with magstripe or some of the newer contactless cards like Amex Blue, Visa PayWave, and so forth. We'll now be able to do that without having to reach into our wallet. We'll just reach for what we already have in our hands all the time. So now I can just walk into a convenience store, pull up a mobile payment wallet application in their hands, and make that payment. The good thing about the EMV payments, if they're done and there are many different types of EMV payments, but some of the more secure models, the information looks random and is encrypted. Mm-hmm. So you don't see the amount being transferred, you don't see the identification information and so forth. Mm-hmm. And those are choices that the banks are going to need to make on what level of security they choose to implement. Mm-hmm. The technology will be there. The question, as it's always been in the United States, will we step up and use the technology as far as we can?